Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right with your money, but you still can't decide which direction to actually go? You open your brokerage app. On one side, there's a friend who swears by dividend stocks. He sends you screenshots every quarter showing cash landing in his account from companies like PepsiCo and Chevron. On the other side, there's your coworker who just dumps every paycheck into a total market index fund, refuses to look at it, and lets it compound for years. Both of them sound convinced. Both of them sound smart. And you're stuck in the middle, wondering if you're wasting time, or worse, bleeding money, by not picking a lane. Here's the truth nobody tells you up front. While there are real tax rules the IRS cares about when it comes to how you invest, at its core, this isn't really a math problem. It's a personality problem wearing a math costume. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which side of that costume fits your life. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Orion, just a guy on the internet reminding you to do your own research. But today, we're settling the debate. Let's get into it. Let's start with the basics, because a lot of the confusion around this topic comes from people skipping this part. When you own a share of stock, you own a sliver of a real business. Some businesses, usually large, mature, cash-generating companies, produce more profit than they know what to do with. They've already built their factories, opened their stores, and expanded into new markets. So instead of hoarding all that extra cash or making questionable acquisitions, they send a portion of it directly to shareholders. That payment is a dividend. Think about companies like PepsiCo, Chevron, and Realty Income. These aren't flashy tech companies chasing the next big trend. They're steady, established businesses that have been sharing profits with shareholders for decades. Realty Income actually pays out monthly and has branded itself the monthly dividend company for exactly that reason. The number everyone throws around is dividend yield, your annual dividend payment divided by the current share price. A stock priced at $80 paying $3.20 a year has a 4% yield. Straightforward enough. If you're like most people getting into investing, picking individual dividend stocks can feel overwhelming. How do you know PepsiCo will still be paying dividends in 20 years? This is exactly why dividend-focused ETFs exist. A fund like SCHD, the Schwab U.S. Dividend Equity ETF, holds a basket of roughly 100 companies screened specifically for consistent dividend payments and financial strength. Instead of betting on one company's ability to keep the checks coming, you're spreading that bet across dozens of businesses at once, and the fund handles the buying, selling, and rebalancing for you. Now flip to the other side of the argument, the broad market index fund. Instead of filtering just for dividends, a broad market fund doesn't try to guess which companies will thrive. It just buys all of them. A fund like VOO, which tracks the S&P 500, gives you ownership in the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States, from Apple to ExxonMobil to your favorite fast food chain. A broader option like VTI goes even further, capturing thousands of U.S. companies of every size, from massive corporations down to small, up-and-coming businesses. This is the exact moment many people get stuck, because both of these approaches sound reasonable on paper, and reasonable-sounding strategies are the hardest ones to choose between. Here's why this decision actually matters right now, in this economy. Inflation makes just letting your money sit there a massive risk. While a high-yield savings account might temporarily keep up with inflation today, traditionally, cash sitting in a standard bank account quietly loses purchasing power over the long haul. At the same time, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the traditional American pension is basically dead for the private sector. More people are working jobs where the responsibility of building retirement income falls entirely on you and your 401k. Nobody is doing this for you. That single shift, from employer-funded pensions to self-funded portfolios, is the real reason this dividend versus broad market debate has exploded across financial content over the last decade. If you're like most Americans, you've probably faced this exact fork in the road while scrolling investing content late at night, watching one video that says dividends are the closest thing to a paycheck for life, and another that says broad market index funds are the only strategy backed by actual data. Both can't be fully right, and both can't be fully wrong either. That tension is exactly what we're going to untangle. Before we move forward, it helps to understand the philosophy each camp is built on. Dividend investors are optimizing for income, cash flow they can see and touch, regardless of what the stock price is doing on any given day. Broad market investors are optimizing for total return, the combined growth of price appreciation plus reinvested dividends, tracked as one number that goes up over decades, even if it dips violently in the short term. Neither philosophy is wrong. They're just answering different questions. And that's the piece most comparison videos skip right past. Let's talk about where people actually get hurt with each strategy, because this is where I used to fail constantly when I was first figuring this out. With dividend investing, The mistake most people make right here is confusing a high yield with a safe yield. Say you're scrolling through a stock screener and you spot a company yielding 9%. Your brain immediately does the math. That's more than double what SCHD pays. I should load up on this. But a yield that high is usually the market's way of screaming a warning. It often means the stock price has already collapsed because investors expect trouble and the dividend hasn't been cut yet, but it's about to be. This happened repeatedly across the energy sector back in 2020, and it's happened with several mortgage REITs more recently. Chasing the number without asking why the number is so high is one of the fastest ways to torch a portfolio. There's a second trap that's more subtle, forgetting that a dividend payment isn't a bonus on top of your investment. When a company pays out cash, the stock exchange actually adjusts the share price down by that exact dividend amount on the morning of the ex-dividend date. You're not being handed free money. You're being handed a piece of your own investment, just converted into cash. It feels like a gift. Mathematically, it's closer to making change. And then there's the tax drag. According to IRS rules, in a regular taxable brokerage account, every dividend you receive is taxable in the year you receive it, even if you automatically reinvest it. Depending on whether they are classified as ordinary or qualified, you're paying a cut to Uncle Sam every single year. Compare that to a broad index fund like VOO, which barely distributes anything beyond its small, natural dividend and rarely triggers taxable events from internal trading. Over 20 or 30 years, that difference in tax friction compounds, quietly, but significantly. Now let's flip to the index fund side, because it has its own blind spot that people underestimate. Near total silence during a crash. Say the market drops 35%, which has happened multiple times in the past few decades. Your dividend-focused friend is still watching cash land in his account every quarter, even if the stock prices themselves are down. You, on the other hand, are staring at a portfolio balance that's dropped by six figures with only a tiny 1% market yield coming in to soften the blow. Nothing about the strategy is broken. The market has always recovered eventually, but eventually doesn't pay your electric bill this month. And that gap is where a lot of otherwise smart investors panic and sell at the worst possible time. There's also a mistake specific to withdrawal timing that almost nobody talks about early enough: retiring right into a market downer. If you retire the same year the market drops sharply and you're forced to sell shares to cover living expenses, you lock in those losses permanently. There's no time for the market to recover before that money is gone. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it's arguably the single biggest hidden danger of relying purely on selling off shares for income. So here's where we stand. Dividend investing can trap you into chasing yield and paying more in taxes along the way. Index investing can leave you white-knuckling through downturns with a portfolio that's technically fine on paper, but painful to watch, and dangerously exposed if a crash hits right as you retire. Neither one is the villain here. Misunderstanding either one is. Here's the part that actually changes how people think about this decision. Let's build two realistic scenarios, side by side, and follow them all the way to retirement. Meet Maria and David. Both are 35 years old. Both want $72,000 a year in retirement income. That's $6,000 a month, enough to cover a comfortable, unremarkable American life. Both plan to retire at 65. Let's ignore taxes for simplicity, since the actual numbers shift depending on whether you use a Roth IRA or a traditional 401k. Maria goes the dividend route. She builds a portfolio centered around SCHD along with a handful of individual dividend aristocrats. Let's say she achieves a realistic blended yield of 3.8% by retirement, a number that's doable without reaching into dangerous high-yield territory. To generate $72,000 a year at a 3.8% yield, Maria needs a portfolio worth roughly $1.9 million. Here's what Maria's retirement actually feels like. Every quarter, cash appears in her account automatically. She never has to decide which shares to sell or worry about timing the market. If prices drop 25% during a recession, her statement looks ugly, but her mailbox, figuratively speaking, is still delivering cash. Yes, severe market crashes can cause some companies to trim their dividends, but historically, dividend payouts are far less volatile than stock prices. That predictability lets her sleep at night in a way that raw numbers on a screen never could. The trade-off: her portfolio is heavily concentrated in dividend-paying sectors like consumer staples, energy, and financials. That means she likely missed out on the explosive growth that came from sectors that pay little to no dividends, like large parts of the tech sector over the past 2 decades. David goes the index route. He puts everything into VOO and VTI for 30 years straight, never touching it, just letting it compound. Because he's not restricted to dividend-paying sectors, his portfolio captures the full breadth of U.S. economic growth, including those high-growth tech companies. Let's say David's portfolio grows to $2.6 million by age 65, larger than Maria's, because unrestricted total market exposure has historically outperformed narrower, income-focused approaches over multi-decade periods. To generate his $72,000 a year, David uses the 4% rule, born from the famous Trinity study in the 1990s, which suggests a retiree can withdraw about 4% of their portfolio annually with a historically low risk of running out of money. On a $2.6 million portfolio, a 4% withdrawal easily covers his target income, with room to spare. Sounds great, until you picture what David's early retirement actually feels like if the market drops 30% in year one. He is now selling shares at depressed prices just to pay his bills, permanently reducing the size of the portfolio that needs to recover. Maria, meanwhile, barely feels the panic of that same crash on her monthly bank statement, because her cash flow hasn't collapsed the way share prices have. This is the real revelation. The dividend investor is optimizing for certainty. The index investor is optimizing for growth. Neither one is free. You're always paying for one with the other. Maria pays for her certainty with a smaller total portfolio and heavier sector concentration. David pays for his larger portfolio with emotional volatility and exposure to bad timing right when he needs the money most. Imagine finally understanding that this was never actually a competition to win. It's a question of which discomfort you're more willing to live with for 30 years. The discomfort of watching your balance swing wildly while still growing faster, or the discomfort of leaving some growth on the table in exchange for cash flow that is much more stable than the stock market. And here's something most videos never mention. You don't have to fully commit to one identity. A growing number of long-term investors build a hybrid, a core position in a broad index fund like VOO for growth, layered with a smaller allocation to something like SCHD for a partial income cushion as retirement approaches. You get most of the growth engine, with a portion of the predictability bolted on. It's not a perfect solution, but very few financial strategies are. Let's bring this all the way back down to something you can actually act on today. If the idea of selling shares during a market downturn makes your stomach turn, if you know, honestly, that you'd panic and sell everything the moment your account drops 20%, then leaning toward dividend-focused investing through something like SCHD may genuinely serve you better, even if the math on paper favors a pure index approach. A strategy you can actually stick with for 30 years beats a theoretically superior strategy you abandon in year 3. If, instead, you can look at a falling account balance and remind yourself that the number will recover and you don't need the income right now, then a low-cost total market fund like VOO or VTI gives you a straightforward, historically strong path to building the largest possible nest egg with the least amount of ongoing decision-making. And if you're still unsure which camp you fall into, that's completely normal. Most people don't know until they've actually lived through a real downturn with real money on the line. Consider starting with a blended approach, the bulk of your contributions into a total market index fund, with a smaller slice into a dividend-focused fund. If you do this inside a tax-advantaged account like an IRA or a 401k, you can always adjust that ratio completely tax-free as retirement gets closer and your priorities shift from growth toward income. Here's what I'd actually encourage you to do this week. Open your brokerage account and check what you're actually invested in right now. Not what you think you're invested in, but what's really there. Then ask yourself one honest question. If the market dropped 30% tomorrow, would you feel calm, or would you feel the urge to sell? Your answer tells you more about which strategy fits you than any spreadsheet ever could. The biggest mistakes in investing were never really about choosing dividends over index funds or index funds over dividends. They were about letting fear or overconfidence drive a decision that should have been made calmly, in advance, before the pressure ever showed up. You've got the tools now. The rest is just consistency. If this video helped clarify things for you, a like genuinely helps this channel more than you'd expect. And if you want a deeper breakdown of building a hybrid dividend and growth portfolio step by step, drop a comment and let me know. That might be exactly what we cover next. As always, remember to do your own research. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.